Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about a double murder case that I came across via, well, my best friend via TikTok. So, what to know about the double murder case involving an au pair. Prosecutors in Virginia say a father was having an affair with his Brazilian au pair and charged both with murder. Now, quick note, the reason why I was so interested in this, aside from the obvious, was also that I grew up with au pairs because having a single mom, she's a chemical engineer. She used to travel a lot when I was a kid, so obviously we had what we used to call live-in nannies. So the concept of au pairs has always been interesting to me. The case has spawned episodes on true crime podcasts and stirred up obsessive chatter in the affluent suburbs of Washington, D.C. A father in Virginia and his Brazilian au pair, with whom he had been accused of having an affair, were charged with murder after the double killing in 2023 of the man's wife and another man who'd been lured to the family's home via a fetish site. The au pair, Juliana Perez Magalhães, I looked up how to pronounce that. That's how I was saying it on Google. I don't know. I do not take responsibility for any of it. Agreed to a plea deal this week. Prosecutors said she pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the shooting death of Joseph Ryan, 38. The man lured to the home where she worked in Herndon, Virginia, about 20 miles outside the capital. Ms. Magalhães will be sentenced in March. As part of the plea agreement, prosecutors downgraded the murder charge she had faced and agreed to recommend that Ms. Magalhães, who had been in custody, be released with credit for time served if she continued to cooperate with the authorities. So one of the main questions that came up for me was, who is this man who was lured via a fetish website? The way that that's casually thrown in is not funny in the context of what happened, but funny in the context of you're really just gonna throw in that some rando showed up via some fetish website and we have no idea how else he's connected to the family, if in any other way, like if there's a friendship, if it's a complete stranger, like who is Fetish Man? Ms. Magalhães could face up to 10 years in prison. Her employer, Brendan Banfield, 39, was arrested in September. Nearly a year after Ms. Magalhães' case will go to trial in February. He's been charged with aggravated murder in the killings of his wife, Christine Banfield, 37, and Mr. Ryan. Prosecutors in Fairfax County say the employer and au pair had been having an affair and have suggested that they plotted to kill Miss Banfield and Mr. Ryan. Here's what to know about the case. I think most of us would surmise that if effectively an affair was going on, if that is confirmed, obviously theory number one would be that the father and the person he's having an affair with, the live-in nanny, would kill the wife. I don't know how Mr. Ryan fits into all of this. Hopefully they'll explain it because it is extremely random sounding from how it's explained so far. But obviously, if there's a third unwanted party in this situation, from what we know, it would be the person who's being cheated on, right? Now I'd like to know how the fuck Mr. Ryan has anything to do with this. Like, who is he in the picture? Of these three people, it makes sense. Mr. and Mrs. Banfield and Magalhães, the au pair, that all makes sense, I understand. I don't understand where this fourth point, Mr. Ryan, comes in. The police found an appalling crime scene. On the morning of February 24th, 2023, police officers responded to 911 calls placed by the au pair, Ms. Magalhães, and found a scene they would later describe as appalling. In a large home on a cul-de-sac, they found Mr. Banfield's wife, a pediatric nurse who'd been stabbed in the upper body and would soon die of her injuries, and Mr. Ryan, who'd been shot dead. Mr. Banfield, Miss Magalhães, the au pair, and Mr. Banfield's 4-year-old daughter were also at the scene unharmed. Miss Magalhães told the police Mr. Ryan was about to stab Miss Banfield that day and they were trying to defend her. But the police found no sign of forced entry and prosecutors said Mr. Ryan, the man who was shot, had been invited to the home for a sexual tryst. Police recovered a knife and 2 guns. Like I said, we have no idea who Mr. Ryan is in context. We don't know if he got along with the family. We don't know anything. So it could be possible that everything they said, that could be true, but it doesn't read as true. The moment that there's an affair going on, everything is colored by that. So I don't even think that you could even try to convince the police that the person having an affair with a married man is not going to have anything to do with the case. Obviously, the married man is going to have something to do with the violence in this case. But anyway, the au pair's account. Miss Magalhães started her job as a live-in child care worker for the Banfields in 2021. On the morning of the killings, Miss Magalhães said she set out with the couple's daughter sometime after 7 a.m. for the zoo, but returned after forgetting their lunch, according to her lawyers, who gave account of events at a hearing in April. She saw an unfamiliar car outside the home and called Miss Banfield, who did not pick up. She then called Mr. Banfield, and once he arrived, they went inside together, the lawyers said. Miss Magalhães took the child to the basement, but heard a commotion and went upstairs, the lawyers said, where Mr. Banfield was shouting, "Drop the knife." Mr. Banfield, who was a criminal investigator for the Internal Revenue Service at the time, told a 911 operator that he had fired his service weapon at a man who was stabbing his wife. Ms. Magalhães told a detective that Mr. Banfield told her to get a second gun for the bathroom, giving her the code to a safe. She retrieved it and fired, the lawyers said, arguing that she was acting in self-defense to protect the family. They let her emphasize that she was acting on orders from her employer. There are a lot of things here that don't really add up to me. Now, is it possible that Mr. Ryan actually did come over, that all of what's being said is true here? Sure. At the same time, this chain of events just doesn't make sense to me, because it's like this man who's your neighbor who was invited over for a sexual tryst for some reason has a knife out, and your response to that is to immediately get your gun out and then tell the au pair to get another gun. The evolution of events here, you know, like if I had a neighbor coming over, someone I know, not for a sexual tryst, mind you, for tea, for example, if I had a neighbor coming over that I know well, I think I'd be so aghast and shocked if they tried to take out a knife at me or a gun that I wouldn't even know how to react. In this case, we have no background info on who the fuck is Mr. Ryan to these people. I think that's why it doesn't make sense to me, because it's like you invite a neighbor over and just casually they have a knife out, they want to stab you, and there's no background to that, there's no lore we need to know. Unless the person is mentally ill, I don't buy that. It's not just randomly someone's gonna take out a knife. Mr. Ryan of Springfield, Virginia was pronounced dead at the scene. A medical examiner testified that he was struck twice in the head and chest, and that it was the shot to the chest, the au pair's bullet, that was the fatal blow. Who was the man shot in the Banfield home? Thank God. Prosecutors say Mr. Ryan exchanged messages with a profile featuring a photograph of Miss Banfield on the website FetLife, which describes itself as a community for people interested in kinky sexual practices. In the plea agreement, prosecutors said Mr. Banfield had created the account to lure Mr. Ryan to the home. Can someone give us context on Mr. Ryan? Truly, I really despise when articles are written this way, because if you don't have context and there's just this random person you have a name for but don't know anything about, it's actually difficult to track the story because you have a person who's basically faceless and just has a name but you know nothing. Mr. Ryan had arranged to come to the Banfield home after discussing plans for quote-unquote rough sex, prosecutors said. Mr. Ryan was open about his activity on FetLife, his friend told the Washington Post. People knew Miss Banfield, said the messages discussing a rendezvous did not sound like her, and a deputy Commonwealth's attorney, Eric Klingen, said in April that there was no evidence that she'd been into knife play, binding, or other similar sexual practices. So prosecutors have offered a possible motive. Ms. Magalhães and Mr. Banfield had been having a months-long affair. In October of 2023, when police returned to the Banfield home with a warrant to arrest Ms. Magalhães, they found she had moved into the master bedroom with her employer, the same room where Ms. Banfield was stabbed 8 months earlier. I'm gonna say, if you don't want to look suspicious, that was a pretty bad move, because not only is that suspicious sounding, it's a little perverse sounding considering in terms of the public perspective. If they're doubting Mr. Banfield in the sense of if they're thinking that he was having an affair with you, if they believe that, and then it turns out that the wife gets killed in some way, and then you, who are accused of having an affair with this man, move into the same bedroom where he slept with the wife that you may be killed with him? Miss Magalhães' clothes were hanging in the closet and her lingerie was strewed around the bed, according to photos introduced at a hearing. A framed picture of the two had been propped on the bedside table. Her lawyers had said that she was Mr. Banfield's girlfriend, but claimed that neither of the Banfields were sexually exclusive. That's very convenient, isn't it? In April, prosecutors revealed the au pair practiced shooting at a gun range 2 months before the murders, and that Mr. Banfield later returned to the range and purchased a pistol, the Glock with which Miss Magalhães shot Mr. Ryan. The two replaced their cell phones shortly before the killings, prosecutors said, and on the morning of the killings, when Miss Magalhães said she called Mr. Banfield to alert him of a stranger in his home, Mr. Banfield was not at work, but waiting outside a nearby McDonald's. I think at this point it's becoming comical how obvious it is, and not comical in the ha-ha hee-hee way, but more like, did they think that none of this was going to make them look bad, or did they not think that any of this would be suspicious, or did they just have a false sense of security? I just have a lot of questions about how they went about all of this, feeling really comfortable in what they were doing. Prosecutors have also pointed out that Ms. Magalhães made several 911 calls that morning before actually speaking to an operator. During one call, she told an operator a friend had been hurt. Mr. Banfield then got on the line and said he had shot his wife's attacker. In September, Mr. Banfield was arrested after forensic experts found evidence that backed up prosecutors' theory that the victims' bodies had been moved after they were fatally injured, prosecutors said. Deputy Commonwealth's attorney Eric Klingen said forensic evidence also revealed Mr. Ryan's arms had been moved and smeared with Miss Banfield's blood, according to the Associated Press. Now, what I would be interested in knowing, and what might be telling, because it does seem like they have a false sense of security, so I'm not sure how many precautions they realistically took, but I'd like to see the communication between Mr. Banfield and Magalhães, like their phone communication, their texts, whatever, any kind of traceable thing like that, because all of this reads as suspicious. There's no moment where I'm like, okay, benefit of the doubt. As much as I want to give the benefit of the doubt, everything here is adding up in a very particular direction that's hard to negate. So the case brought attention to Au Pair. Miss Magalhães found her post through Culture Care Au Pair, a large agency which declined to provide a statement but said it had cooperated with police. So then it talks about Au Pair, which I don't really think is necessarily super relevant in this case. It just talks about how au pairs are placed and the dangers that au pairs can face. I don't think that that is necessarily central here as much as the affair is central, but the article will be linked down below if you want to read about au pairs specifically. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Honestly, I think a lot of cases are more complicated than this one. This one, on the other hand, to me reads as very point A to point B. Man is having an affair on his wife. Man is having an affair on his wife with live-in nanny. Man and live-in nanny decide to plot against the wife. Conveniently, some guy allegedly tries to attack the wife for no given reason, Mr. Ryan. And then the wife dies conveniently. And then conveniently, the au pair that is having the affair with the man of the house, Mr. Banfield, moves in to the master bedroom. Where are we supposed to go with this information, honestly? Are there really that many options? Are there that many possibilities? I think the fuck not. Anyway, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.